who is D.B. Cooper has fascinated people ever since a man calling himself by that name hijacked Northwest Airlines Flight 305 back in 1971.
For 53 years, the FBI has chased ghosts. They hunted a phantom who jumped out of a Boeing 727 and vanished into thin air. We thought the case was cold. We thought the secrets were buried in the mud of the Pacific Northwest. But science just caught up to the legend. A microscopic particle trapped in a cheap clip-on tie has just unlocked a door that was sealed since 1971. This isn't another theory. This is biological certainty. The man known as D.B. Cooper isn't a myth anymore. He has a name, and you won't believe who it is. The microscopic clue no one saw coming. But here's the catch. For over 50 years, the D.B. Cooper mystery has hovered somewhere between fact and folklore. It is the kind of story you tell around a campfire. A man in a suit hijacks a plane, demands cash, and jumps into a stormy night, never to be seen again. Every few years, a new breakthrough grabs headlines. A confession here, a buried parachute there, but nothing ever sticks. The case remains frozen in time. But in early 2025, that silence was shattered. Whispers began to spread through the true crime community like wildfire. A small private research group claimed to have found new DNA evidence on Cooper's iconic black tie. Now you have to understand why this is a game changer. That tie has been handled, studied, and even displayed for decades. It is a cheap, clip-on model from JCPenney. Previous FBI testing in the early 2000s had yielded nothing useful. They found partial prints, maybe some organic material, but nothing that could build a profile. Yet, according to this new report, advances in DNA extraction and analysis have made the impossible suddenly possible. We are talking about vacuuming fibers for skin cells that have been trapped in the weave of the polyester for 53 years. Using ultra-sensitive microgenetic tools, scientists claim to have isolated tiny traces of human DNA trapped deep in the fibers, untouched since 1971. And that is where things got wild. Sources close to the investigation, mostly independent researchers and forensic hobbyists, said the DNA showed partial matches to lineages connected to aerospace engineering and technical manufacturing in the Pacific Northwest. Those details echoed what has long been known, that microscopic titanium particles were found on Cooper's tie years ago. Think about that for a second. Titanium wasn't something you found in a regular household in the 70s. It was used in high-end chemical plants and, you guessed it, aircraft production. In other words, whoever wore that tie wasn't your average office worker. He was probably someone who worked around planes, maybe even someone who built them. The private group hasn't released names publicly to protect the innocent, but rumors began swirling online immediately. Some said the DNA linked to a family of Boeing subcontractors in Washington. Others claimed the match was to a now-deceased military parachute technician. Neither claim has been verified, and the FBI, which officially closed the case in 2016, has refused to reopen it or comment on the findings. But get this, the lack of official comment makes it even more suspicious to the die-hard hunters. Why stay silent if the evidence is junk? Still, that hasn't stopped people from talking or hoping. For followers of the mystery, this is the closest thing to progress in years. Imagine a genetic breadcrumb leading to the man who pulled off the only unsolved skyjacking in U.S. history. But is it real? That is where the debate begins. Forensic experts are divided. Some say it is entirely plausible that trace DNA could survive, especially if protected deep within synthetic fibers. Others warn that contamination over 50 years, from FBI agents, lab techs, museum handlers, even curious visitors, could easily render any new sample unreliable. In other words, it might not be Cooper's DNA at all. It could be the DNA of an agent who sneezed on the evidence in 1982. Even the so-called aerospace link is murky. Yes, titanium particles suggest industrial exposure, but those same materials were also used in bicycle paint, tools, and even copy machines at the time. So the connection to Boeing, while romantic and exciting, remains circumstantial. Still, the idea refuses to die because the legend of D.B. Cooper isn't just about facts. It is about what he represents. A kind of rebellious, old-school mystery that modern technology hasn't been able to solve. Until now, one name even leaked briefly online before being quietly deleted. An engineer who once worked for Boeing and disappeared in the late 70s. No proof ever surfaced, but for a few days the internet lit up with the idea that this could be the man. Then, like every Cooper lead before it, the story went quiet again. But not dead. Never dead. Even some retired FBI agents admit it is hard to let go. One former investigator, speaking anonymously, said, "Every few years, someone comes forward with something. You start to think, maybe this time, and then it slips away again." The science is tightening the net. We are looking at a future where anonymity is impossible, even for ghosts from the past. If that tie really holds the key, then Cooper's family, his children, or his grandchildren are walking around right now carrying the genetic proof of the perfect crime in their blood. It is only a matter of time before the final match is made. But before we unmask the man, we have to understand the madness of the mission itself. The science says he was an expert, but the jump says he was insane. How to hijack a 727 without raising your voice. Let's rewind the clock. November 24th, 1971. It was Thanksgiving Eve. While most Americans were stressing about turkey timers and pumpkin pie, one man in a black suit, skinny tie, and dark sunglasses was about to make history. He wasn't famous, he wasn't wealthy, and as far as anyone knew, he wasn't dangerous. He looked like the kind of guy you would pass in an airport and forget 5 seconds later. Just another suit in the crowd. But that night, he would become the stuff of a legend. He bought a ticket at Portland International Airport. He paid cash, $20, one way. Destination, Seattle. The airline was Northwest Orient, Flight 305. The ticket clerk barely noticed him. You have to remember, back then, air travel was casual. It was the golden age of flying. No TSA lines, no body scanners, no taking off your shoes, and definitely no plastic baggies for your liquids. People could stroll onto a plane with a smile and a boarding pass, and that is exactly what this man did. His ticket simply said, Dan Cooper. Once on board, he picked a seat near the back, seat 18C. It was a smart choice. It gave him a view of the cabin, but kept his back to the rear galley. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette. Yes, you could smoke on planes back then, putting the whole cabin in a haze of tobacco. He blended in like a business traveler, winding down after a long week. The flight attendants later remembered him as calm, polite, even a little charming. Nothing about him screamed criminal mastermind. He wasn't sweating, he wasn't looking around nervously, but tucked in his briefcase right there at his feet was something that would change aviation forever. Not long after takeoff, he slipped a note to one of the flight attendants, Florence Schaffner. Now, Florence was used to this. Attractive flight attendants got notes from businessmen all the time. Phone numbers, hotel keys, bad pickup lines. She assumed he was just another guy hitting on her. She slid the note into her pocket without even reading it. She went back to her duties. That is when Cooper leaned in. He didn't yell, he didn't pull a gun, he just whispered, calm as ice. "Miss, you better look at that note. I have a bomb." Her world flipped upside down. She pulled the note back out. It was written in neat all-caps letters with a felt-tip pen. The demand was specific. He wanted $200,000 in negotiable American currency. He wanted 4 parachutes, 2 back chutes and 2 chest chutes. And he wanted a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refill the plane for an immediate getaway. Oh, and no funny business, or he would blow the whole thing sky high. To prove he wasn't bluffing, he cracked open the briefcase just enough for her to see. Inside, she saw wires, red sticks that looked like dynamite, and a big battery. It looked real enough to her. She went to the cockpit. The pilots notified air traffic control, and the airline scrambled to meet his demands. But here is the crazy part. The passengers, they had no idea. Cooper told the crew to stay calm. He told them to keep everyone comfortable. He didn't want panic. He didn't want heroes. Imagine being on that flight, sipping your coffee, thinking you are just 30 minutes away from Seattle, maybe planning your holiday meal. Meanwhile, right behind you, a man is holding a detonator, planning one of the boldest escapes in history. The pilot came over the intercom and announced a minor mechanical delay. Just circling to burn off fuel, they said. It was a lie, of course. On the ground in Seattle, it was chaos. The FBI was racing to banks to get the cash. They needed $20 bills mostly, 10,000 bills. That is a lot of weight, roughly 21 pounds of cash. They also had to find the parachutes. This was a weird request. Why 4? Was he taking hostages? Was he jumping with the crew? The FBI couldn't risk sabotaging the chutes because they didn't know who would be wearing them, so they delivered the goods. By the time the plane landed in Seattle, the sun had set. It was raining, a cold, miserable November rain. Cooper's plan was in motion. The authorities delivered the money in a knapsack. They delivered the parachutes. In exchange, Cooper allowed the passengers to leave. You can see the footage from that night. People walking down the stairs, smiling, hugging their families, totally oblivious that they had just been hostages. But the crew? They were staying. Cooper had new instructions for the pilot. He wanted to fly to Mexico City, but not the usual way. He wanted to fly low, under 10,000 feet. He wanted the wing flaps at 15 degrees. He wanted the landing gear down. He wanted the cabin unpressurized. And most importantly, he wanted the rear air stair left unlocked. The pilots told him that flying all the way to Mexico City in that configuration, with that drag, was impossible. They would run out of fuel. Cooper was reasonable. He said, "Fine, we will refuel in Reno, Nevada." He was agreeable. He was polite. He even tried to give the flight attendants a tip from the ransom money. Who does that? The plane took off again into the darkness. It was just Cooper, the pilots in the cockpit, and one flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, in the back with him. He told her to go to the cockpit and close the curtain. He wanted privacy. As she walked away, she saw him tying the money bag to his waist. He was wrapping the parachute harness around his suit. He was putting on dark wraparound sunglasses. And then he was alone. Inside the cockpit, the pilot saw a warning light flash. The rear door was open. The air pressure in the cabin fluctuated. The plane dipped like a heavy weight had just fallen off the back. It was 8:13 p.m. Somewhere over the dense forests of Washington state, in the middle of a rainstorm, with a wind chill factor well below freezing, D.B. Cooper did the unthinkable. He walked down those stairs. He looked into the black void beneath him, and he jumped. No chase cars, no helicopters could track them in the storm, no GPS, just a man, a bag of quam, and a parachute vanishing into the storm. And here's the kicker. No one has ever seen him since. Not a hair, not a bone, not a single verified trace of the man himself. Who pulls off a stunt straight out of a spy movie and actually gets away with it? The FBI launched the biggest manhunt in history. They scoured the woods. They dragged the rivers. They interviewed thousands of people. They found nothing. It was like the earth just swallowed him whole. The sheer audacity of it is what captures our imagination. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't scream. He just took the money and left. But was it bravery or was it stupidity? That is the question that haunts the case. Jumping into a freezing rainstorm at 10,000 feet wearing a trench coat and loafers isn't exactly a survival strategy. It is a self-harm mission. He had the money, but did he have the skills to survive the fall? The frozen woods that swallowed a ghost. Let's get technical for a minute, because to understand why this mystery is still unsolved, you have to understand the sheer insanity of what Cooper actually did. This wasn't a skydive. This was a leap of faith into a black hole. The plane was flying along Vector 23. That is the airway that runs south from Seattle towards Portland and then down to Reno. The pilots were flying slow, about 170 knots. That is roughly 200 miles per hour. It feels slow for a jet, but if you stick your head out the window of a car doing 200, you lose your head. Now imagine standing on a wobbly metal staircase hanging off the back of a plane with that wind tearing at your clothes. The Boeing 727 was the only commercial plane at the time that allowed the rear stairs to be lowered in flight. Cooper knew this. This is a detail that keeps investigators up at night. How did he know? An average traveler wouldn't know the mechanics of the air stair apparatus. He wouldn't know that you could override the safety lock. This suggests he had specific knowledge. Maybe he was a mechanic, maybe he was a paratrooper, or maybe he just did a lot of reading at the library. So the stairs are down. The noise is deafening. The engines of a 727 are mounted on the tail, right above where he is standing. The roar would be absolute. It is pitch black. The cloud ceiling was low. Below him is the rugged terrain of Southwest Washington. We are talking about tall Douglas fir trees, steep ravines, and the Lewis River. It is not a soft landing spot. Cooper is wearing a business suit. He has loafers on his feet, slip-on shoes. Think about that. He jumps, and the slipstream alone probably ripped those shoes right off his feet. He is instantly subjected to a wind chill of roughly 7 degrees below zero. If he didn't freeze, he had to worry about the landing. He had 2 parachutes. One was a military-grade chute, and one was a civilian sports chute. In his haste, or maybe his ignorance, he grabbed the military chute to wear on his back. But here is the catch. The reserve chute he took, the one for his chest, was a dummy. It was a training chute sewn shut. It couldn't open. Did he know that? Did he grab it by mistake? Or did he not even check? If he was an expert, that is a rookie mistake. If he was an amateur, he was just guessing. He jumps, he falls. He pulls the ripcord. Now, assuming the chute opens, which is a big if in that weather, he is now drifting down into a forest at night. He can't steer, he can't see. He is carrying 21 pounds of cash strapped to his waist. That bag is heavy. It swings. It throws off his center of gravity. If he lands in a tree, he could be impaled. If he lands in the river, the weight of the money and the wet parachute could drown him in seconds. If he lands on the ground, he is hitting uneven terrain in the dark. Breaking a leg is a death sentence out there. Hypothermia would set in within hours. Search teams spent weeks combing that area. They used soldiers. They used submarines in the lakes. They used the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane to photograph the ground from high altitude. They found nothing. No parachute canopy caught in a tree, no body, no scattered bills. This led to the splash theory. The idea is that he landed in the Columbia River and was washed out to the ocean. The evidence for this? Nothing direct. But years later, some of the money was found on a riverbank known as Tina Bar. We will get to that. But the lack of a body is what keeps the he survived theory alive. In the woods, nature reclaims things vast. Animals scatter bones, leaves cover fabric. But a parachute? A nylon canopy is tough. It doesn't rot quickly. If it was there, someone should have found it. This brings us back to the plane. When the jet landed in Reno, the stairs were still down, scraping the runway, sparks flying. The FBI swarmed the aircraft, and they found the tie. They found 8 cigarette butts, which they later lost, a massive blunder. They found a few fingerprints, but the man was gone. It was the perfect locked room mystery, except the room was moving at 200 miles per hour. The pilots were shaken. The stewardess, Tina Mucklow, was the last person to see him. She described him as thoughtful and gentle. It is a weird disconnect. A hijacker who worries about the crew's comfort. This psychological profile is key. Cooper wasn't a frantic junkie. He wasn't a political terrorist screaming about a cause. He did it for the money, pure and simple. But the way he did it suggests a man who had nothing to lose. You don't jump out of a plane in a suit unless you don't care if you die, or you are so arrogant you think you can't fail. There is another angle. The insider theory. Did he have ground support? Was there someone waiting in the woods with a truck and a flashlight? It is unlikely. The jump zone was too unpredictable. He couldn't have known exactly when he would jump. The pilots couldn't even pinpoint the exact moment he left because of the storm turbulence. He was on his own. So we have a man versus nature scenario. A guy in a thin suit against the freezing wilderness. Statistics say he died. Gravity says he died. The cold says he died. But until we find a call or a name tag, the door is open. And that open door allowed a flood of suspects to walk right in. If he didn't die in the woods, he had to go somewhere. And some people think he went right back to his normal life, the copycat who almost got away with it. If there is one thing the D.B. Cooper case never lacked, it was suspects. Over the years, more than 800 people were investigated, interrogated, or casually accused of being the man who jumped into legend. Some suspects seem plausible. Others, well, let's just say they were more entertaining than realistic. Either way, each one added another layer to the myth. Let's start with the heavyweight champion of suspects, Richard Floyd McCoy. This guy is the favorite for a reason. Just 5 months after Cooper jumped, McCoy pulled off a hijacking that was basically a Xerox copy of the Cooper job. We are talking almost identical. April 1972. McCoy is a 29-year-old Vietnam vet. He is a Green Beret. He is a skilled helicopter pilot and an avid skydiver. He boards a United Airlines flight in Denver. He hands over a note. He demands parachutes. He demands $500,000. Cooper's inflation-adjusted twin. He jumps out over Utah. McCoy survived his jump. He landed, hid the gear, and went home. He might have gotten away with it too if he hadn't bragged to a buddy. The FBI raided his house and found the money. So, was McCoy actually Cooper? The method is perfect. The skills are perfect. But the description, not so much. Cooper was described as older, in his mid-40s, with a receding hairline. McCoy was young, barely 30, with a full head of hair and a different facial structure. The flight attendants who spent hours with Cooper looked at McCoy's photo and said, "No, that's not him." The FBI ruled him out because he had an alibi for Thanksgiving 1971. He was having dinner with family in Utah. But alibis can be faked, right? Many researchers still think McCoy did both jobs. They think he wore makeup or a disguise for the first one. It is the Super Cooper theory. 1 man, 2 jumps. Then there was Kenneth Christensen. This guy worked for Northwest Orient Airlines. He was a purser. He knew the crews. He knew the planes. He was a former paratrooper. After he died, his brother found gold coins and bank accounts that didn't match his salary. Plus, he looked a lot like the sketch. He smoked. He drank bourbon. He was left-handed. Cooper picked up his drink with his left hand. On his deathbed, he told his brother, "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you." Talk about a cliffhanger. But the FBI wasn't convinced. Christiansen was shorter and lighter than the description. And the DNA from the tie? It didn't match his family. But again, was the tie really Cooper's? Or did he steal it from someone else? Another favorite was Dwayne Weber. His wife claimed that before he died, Weber looked at her and muttered, "I'm Dan Cooper." Just like that. She started digging. She found an old ticket from Northwest Airlines in his papers. She found he had a criminal past. She even remembered him having a nightmare where he talked about leaving fingerprints on the aft stairs. It sounds spooky, it sounds perfect, but the FBI compared his DNA to the partial profile they had at the time, before the 2025 breakthrough, and said it was no match. The facial recognition software also said no. Weber was probably just a guy with a vivid imagination and a desire for posthumous fame. And we can't forget William J. Smith, a WVU vet. He had a grudge against the airline. He worked in a rail yard, which explains the metal particles found on the tie. Before the titanium discovery refined that theory. He fit the sketch perfectly, but like the others, it is all circumstantial. No money was ever linked to him. No parachute was found in his attic. The list goes on. There was the Barb theory that Cooper was a woman in drag. There was the theory that he was a French-Canadian comic book fan because Dan Cooper is the name of a famous Belgian comic book hero who is a pilot. That one is actually compelling. The comic wasn't sold in the US. You had to be in Europe or Canada to know it. Did Cooper spend time abroad? Was he a Canadian? But here is the wildest curveball, the money. In 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was digging a fire pit on a sandy beach called Tina Bar on the Columbia River. He found 3 bundles of cash, rotting, black, rubber bands crumbling. It was the Cooper cash. The serial numbers matched. This discovery changed everything. The money was found 20 miles away from the supposed drop zone, and it was found upstream from where he should have landed. How did it get there? Did he bury it? Did he lose it? Did it float there? Geologists looked at the sand layers. They argued about when the money was deposited. Some said it was buried shortly after the hijacking. Others said it was dredged up by river crews years later. If Cooper buried it, he survived. If he lost it in the river, he probably died. The money didn't spend itself. Not a single other bill from that ransom has ever turned up in circulation. Not one. That is the strongest evidence that he didn't get to embalm his retirement. If he lived, he walked away from the fortune he risked his life for. Who does that? Unless the money was just a trophy and the act was the real prize. So we are left with a gallery of rogues, the copycat McCoy, the employee Christensen, the confessor Weber. None of them fit perfectly. There is always a piece of the puzzle that doesn't snap into place. That is why this new DNA test is so critical. It cuts through the stories. It ignores the alibis. It looks at the biological code of the man who sweated on that collar. But what if the DNA points to someone we have never heard of? What if D.B. Cooper wasn't a soldier or a spy? What if he was just a guy named Bob from accounting who had a really bad week? So do you think the DNA results are real, or is this just another wild goose chase? And if he is alive, should we even arrest him at this point? Smash that like button, subscribe for more mysteries, and let me know your verdict in the comments.